Hang on, hang on. So excited to get ready. All right, let me make sure. I'm ready to rock and roll. There, I'm in. Okay. Oh yeah, let me throw up this little old invitation so you feel welcome. So I'll feel welcome. So we'll all feel welcome. And let's bring up my screen share so I can yak about something that I wanted to yak about. See if I can make this like I want it. Okay, how about that? God bless Paul Volcker. All right. So what we have here is a failure to communicate. Now, I wanted to share with you guys some thoughts on how the world works. And I believe that almost everything that we think we know and almost everything we think we believe is just the opposite. It's really just the opposite of reality. So we think the world works in one way, but no, it doesn't really work that way. It works in some other way. And it takes a while. I mean, when you're a child, you don't get these things. It goes right over your head. Even when you're a young adult, even a middle-aged adult, even old people don't necessarily get what's going on in the world at any given time. There's so many deceptions going on. You think the world is moving along in this direction because of this, but no, it's actually moving along in that direction because of some other thing that's going on behind the scenes that you haven't even considered. Anyway, so and we can look at the world through many pairs of glasses. And you can, and I'm not talking about the Bible necessarily at the moment. That's a fine topic now. I'm talking about how the world works as far as we see and understand things, right? Well, you can look at the world through the prism of easy access to oil, easy access to money, easy access to technology. You can look at the world through the prism of the presence of wars or the lack of wars, through gold versus paper money. You can look at the world through, I don't know, you can go in any number of directions, but I want to say that this fellow here on the screen, Paul Volcker, he was a savior of mankind back in the 80s, and nobody knows who he was, by and large. You have to really be interested in how the world works before you crack open a book or a research effort or run down various rabbit holes to, confirm your ideas or change your mind about things. And I think we can say that Paul Volcker was a savior of the world back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, because he gave us interest rates around 20%. Now, why would I say that? Well, I was a young man back in the 80s. And at the time, I didn't know who the hell Paul Volcker was, but I did see interest rates climbing to the moon, hovering around 20%. And I didn't know what was going on. That scared me. Interest rates, it scared me at 20%. And now we live in a world where interest rates are pretty close to zero. And now I have a bit more knowledge, and maybe even you would call it wisdom. And now I can tell you low interest rates scare me. Why? Well, high interest rates means that money has value. Low interest rates means that money has no value or almost no value. If the interest rate actually does go to zero, that's it, man. That means money has no value. So how does this play out? Why would I say that Paul Volcker was a savior? Well, throughout the 70s, first let's define inflation. Inflation is on a lot of people's tongue right now because they see the price of peanut butter and Pop-Tarts and petunias, anything that starts with P, to match in a positive way with Paul Volcker. Peanut butter, petunias, potato chips. Well, right now we can see inflation. And of course, everybody can see shrinkflation too. And shrinkflation is another form of inflation. So what is shrinkflation? That's when you go and buy a bag of potato chips and there's hardly any potato chips in there. You shake it and it's mostly air. Whereas several years ago, you bought a bag of potato chips and it was a bag of potato chips. So they're shrinking the volume and charging you the same price or even jacking up the price and giving you less for it. So people are now talking about inflation across the country. So I want to go out of my way here and define what inflation is. Inflation, the true definition of inflation is printing up a hell of a lot of money. It doesn't necessarily mean that the prices of things will go up. No, it just means that a hell of a lot of money has been printed. And that's step one. You got to print up the money. And in today's world, we don't have a lot of paper money out there. We have mostly digital money. So the printing consists of some central banker using all 10 fingers and printing up a money with a keystroke. He prints up trillions of dollars with a keystroke. So the word printing money it's a figure of speech. It's a figure of retention from a bygone day when money printing really was, Now it's digital money. So what is inflation? The inflation is the creation of money. Whether it's an artificial creation or a legitimate creation, it's still the creation of money. Now, the way we see it out here in suburban land, is we keep looking at the price of peanut butter and the price of socks and maybe the price of shovels if we go out to buy a shovel to dig in the backyard. We look at those prices and we say, we don't have much inflation. We're not worried. Nobody's shocked. But today it's happening. We're seeing inflation and people are kind of like getting a little bit above a whisper about the matter. And so, but I want to tell you that truly, the true definition of inflation is creating the money to start with. Just because you don't see the price of peanut butter shovels and socks going up doesn't mean that inflation has not happened. So here's how the world works in that regard. So the central bankers print up the money, and then they can't control where the money goes exactly. They just print it up. And so over the past years, 20, 30 years, where has the money gone? Oh, well, just look at the Pentagon budget. Wow, that thing has gone up. And every time the Pentagon budget gets choked up a little, oh, they cry and issue press releases and have everybody talking about, oh, we must supply the military. They're the poor darling military. They need more weapons to blow up the world and so forth. So they've gotten their budget inflated way bad. And then we've got an inflation that's happened in the school college loan program. So we give all these kids, we loan them money to go to school. And of course, when extra money, easy money flows into an industry or sector of the world, of the economy, of course, everybody gets a feel for it. So they start jacking up prices. So that's why we see reports all the time of people being able to sell a hammer to the military for $500 or a toilet seat for $1,000. We see those newspaper reports as well. We don't have newspapers anymore, but we see those reports coming through from time to time that somebody actually gets caught selling a toilet seat and a hammer for $1,500, $2,000. Well, there's inflation going on, baby. The military has easy access to money, and by having easy access to money, they have no responsibility in how they spend it. Easy come, easy go. Why care if somebody's charging us $500 for a hammer? Who the hell cares? We got this money. We don't have to give an account for our spending. Besides, the guy who sold us the hammer, he's my brother's cousin, my sister's neighbor's friend. It's a circle jerk. Okay, so the Pentagon gets their fair share of it. Then the student of the colleges get a an overabundant fair share of the money supply that was printed up. Because I'm telling you, inflation is the creation of money, and inflation is not yet. It doesn't. It shows up later in the price of things, but it's not. The price of things is not inflation itself. Okay. So. And then, so Pentagon gets it, colleges get it, the housing market gets it. Houses have gone to the moon in price. The stock market gets a lot of money. Stocks have gone way out of control in price. So has there been price rises everywhere? Well, not in the price of peanut butter and socks, but yeah, we've seen price rises go to the moon and many other things. It used to be back in the 60s, you could go to college and pay it off with a job as a busboy. I'll tell you another place where inflation is going, the inflated money supply. Right now, it's going in the jabby. You think the so-called vaccine is free? Somebody's paying for that stuff. Who is paying for it? Well, they must have access to that easily printed money. They must have a back door to that easily printed money because they're not making you pay for it. So how the world works, okay. So I'm telling you, this guy, Paul Volcker, actually saved the world for a while. Because in the 80s, he was the dude behind the scenes. Nobody knew who he was at the time. Nobody paid attention to anything beyond the presidential race. Well, we knew that Reagan was president, and that's just the front guy, right? Presidents are always the front man. Nobody knows what's going on behind the scenes, who's backstabbing who, and all of life, all of government, all of politics, all of large corporations is a game of backstabbing. So this guy, Paul Volcker, comes along. He's appointed the head of the Federal Reserve, and somehow he's got more brains than everybody else. And he knows the value of interest rates. When you jack up the value of interest rates, so he was moving the interest rates up and up and up until it was about 20%. And in the 80s, it scared me. I didn't know how the world worked, and I didn't know that Paul Volcker was brilliant and that interest rates were actually a salvation to high interest rates were actually a salvation to mankind. Low interest rates is a stab in the back to mankind. And here's how it works. So the real world works on a basis of saving, because savings is our future. And if you encourage savings, then you are asking people to make decisions, good decisions that will affect the future in a good way, because they save money so they have money for a rainy day, right? But there are a lot of morons out there in the universe of the dark overlords who want people to spend money, and they think spending is good for the economy. But no, you want people to save money, because savings is actually good for the economy, and then letting people spend money how they want to, when they want to. Let them make the damn decision. But if you trick them into spending money by lowering interest rates, you are stealing from the future. You are robbing savings. There's no encouragement to save money when interest rates are near zero. And if you don't save, there's not a bright future ahead, because you're going to have a rainy day and you won't be able to pull some stash out to pay for the rainy day. Okay? So, once upon a time, there was a farmer and a king. And every year, this farmer grew 3 bushels of corn. With 1 bushel of corn, he paid his taxes, and with 1 bushel, he fed his family. And the 3rd bushel was seed corn for the next year, for next year's crop, right? That was savings. That was the savings. It was seed corn. What is savings? It's the pile of money with which we use to plant things for the future. And what do we plant? Well, of course, we can plant crops, but also we can use that pile of money to plant in a new business, a new venture. We can buy some rental property that we rent out. We can loan it to a guy who has a really good business idea. And if you don't have the savings, you can't buy the future. If you don't have the savings, you are at the mercy of the future. Okay? So Paul Volcker encourages savings by jacking up the interest rates to 20%. People started saving money. And when you have a high interest rate, you actually kick the asses of all the people who have a stupid business idea, and you don't lend money to those stupid business idea guys. But when you have low interest and you're creating money out of thin air, easy peasy, with just a click of a computer button, right? And there's no problem. Some guy comes along with a stupid business idea. Loan him the money. Hell, it's just 2% interest. It's just 4% interest. It's just really low, you know. You're stealing from the future with low interest rates. And so in 2008, when there was a big boom in real estate prices and everybody thought that real estate would go up forever, Nobody thought that real estate would crash. It had never crashed before 2008. And there were a lot of stupid people who thought that they would get in on the real estate boom, not by buying real estate. I mean, there were a lot of stupid people who made bad real estate decisions, of course. But there were a lot of people who got into the real estate boom by buying a backhoe and a crane and buying a bunch of trucks and getting a bunch of carpenters to work with them. They were going to build houses. So they had all this money invested in building more houses because the real estate boom looked like it was never going to end. And then overnight, real estate prices were cut in half. There were thousands of building projects that were just left abandoned. And what happened? How did they rescue themselves? Printing more money. I mean, there was such a crisis at the time. It was thought that banks, the big banks, would have to file bankruptcy. Imagine that, a bank filing bankruptcy. But no, in 2008, 2009, we were bailing out the banks through taxpayer money, giving them bazillions of dollars to bail out the stupid bankers. I got Paul Volcker's face up here because he was a smart banker. He knew how the world really worked. And he graciously, smartly, beautifully jacked up interest rates to 20% in the 80s. It was a really serious problem in the 70s. Inflation was such a serious problem. I didn't know what was going on because I'm barely out of my teens in the 70s. But I saw every can of soup had 7 price tags on it. At the time, they had these little tiny price tags and a little gun that would spit out the price tags. And it looked like every day, maybe every week, but it looked like every day they'd come along and put a new price on it. They jacked the price up. The can of soup was 10 cents, and then it was 12 cents, and then it was like you could peel off the stickers because they didn't bother peeling off the old stickers to put on a new sticker. You could see many stickers on those canned goods and the products on the shelves. So I'm telling you, when you destroy interest rates, you are encouraging the disrespect of money altogether. Why respect money when it only demands, it only gives 2% interest, 4% interest? It's not worth bothering, not worth saving, and not worth even creating a business to create money. Why risk all the brain power, all the sweat, labor, and equity that you're going to put into creating a business just to create money when money has no real value? Look at the interest rates. They're dismal. That's not encouraging savers, and it's not encouraging the creation of money by starting a business. By having super low interest rates, we are encouraging the destruction of money, the ignoring of money. We're printing it up so much that money is kind of like leaves in the autumn. It's sticking to your feet, and mom says, wipe your feet before you come in this house. It's all over the place. Easy money and easy credit is always followed by hard money and hard credit. It's just an economic law. When you create oodles and oodles of money, you create a dynamic that travels into the future. It's stealing the value. Let's say you have everybody wakes up in the morning and there's a big pile of money in the kitchen. I mean, it goes almost to the window. What are they going to do with it? They're going to spend it as fast as they can because it's obviously not of any value, because everybody wakes up with a big pile of money in the kitchen. So they rush out as soon as they can and they buy Jaguars and motorcycles and swimming pools. And what do the sellers do of motorcycles and Jaguars and swimming pools? They see that the money is coming in easy And of course, they woke up to a pile of it. So they value their Jaguars and motorcycles and swimming pools much more than they do the money. So they started asking for more and more money for the swimming pools and Jaguars and motorcycles. It creates a dynamic that's it's confusing. What's going on? God bless Paul Volcker. He saved the day. He gave us a couple of more decades to figure it out. And of course, Paul Volcker's not on the scene anymore. We have Alan Greenspan who took over, and then a series of morons after him. But Paul Volcker was not a moron; he was a genius. So, the farmer grows 3 bushels of corn. One to pay his taxes with, one to feed his family with, and one to grow corn for the next year. So it's called seed corn. Well, one year, the king comes to the farmer and says, "Ooh, I'm in trouble. I've been spending too much money on welfare and warfare. Oh, I need more money. Give me that seed corn, your seed corn, and I'll give you corn bonds, 45% interest due in 1 year." And the farmer says, "Whoa, 45% interest for sitting on my ass. Okay." So he coughs up the seed corn, gives it to the king. And 1 year later, the king comes back and says, "Oh man, I can't make good on those corn bonds. I'm sorry." So the king and the farmer starved to death because the farmer did not plant any corn. He was dependent on the king to keep his promises and give him 45% interest due in 1 year. The damn farmer was a fool. Of course, the king is a fool. So that's the end of the story. They starved to death, except for one little secret chapter. There's a sequel. And the sequel, what's it called? The son of the farmer, the son of the seed corn? Because in Universal Studios used to make horror movies back in the 50s. They'd make Frankenstein, and they made the son of Frankenstein, and Dracula and the son of Dracula, the bride of Dracula. So what would we call this sequel? We call it the son of the seed corn. Anyway, so in the sequel, after the king leaves, the farmer participates in the black market. He's got some more seed corn hidden in his barn. So he starts the cycle all over again. He plants, and the king hears about it and comes back to collect some more tax money. But this time, the farmer's not fooled into buying bonds. He's already gotten ripped off one time. The only time the king can sell bonds is after that farmer dies and his stupid son takes over. And then the son sells, gives the king the seed corn in exchange for corn bonds. It goes that way. Once you burn somebody with bonds in the bond market, it's hard to sell the bonds again. That actually happened in the 1930s in Australia. The Prime Minister of Australia rather famously screwed the bondholders of Australia because he said, "Forget you guys, I'm going to use this money and pay welfare programs. I love welfare," because he was a socialist. Anyway, he screwed the bondholders royally in the 1930s, and Australia just couldn't sell bonds again for 40 years until after all those bondholders died off and a new batch of suckers came along who hadn't gotten stung yet. It took them 40 years to have a bond market again. So, how to see the world? One of the reasons I plugged in this show and wanted to share my thoughts about these things is because we're at a weird time in the world today. It's really weird. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who are unemployed. And yet there are hundreds of thousands of signs up all across America saying, come work for us. You know, McDonald's is now hiring. Restaurants are now hiring. Even some of the saints who participate in this little corner of the Ace Theo room, they're having trouble finding employees. We're at a weird state in the world. And I was trying to figure it out. So I called one of the brothers just to think out loud. What's the world doing? Where's the world going? And one of the things that has helped me a lot to see and understand how the world works is that novel by Ayn Rand called Atlas Shrugged. And if you haven't read the novel, it's pretty dynamic. It's Rock'em Sock'em Robot dynamic. It is the most strange novel in the history of novels, because in all novels throughout history, the businessman is the bad guy. But in this novel, she shows that really the businessman and the entrepreneur is really the good guy and the savior of the world, in a sense. So in her novel, it's called Atlas Shrugged. Well, when she was writing the novel, the working title of the novel was called The Strike. Now, you know what a strike is. It's when the labor union demands more money for less work. They go on strike and they demand more money for less work. Well, in this strike, Ayn Rand created a whole novel that says, let's see what happens when the entrepreneur goes on strike, when the businessman goes on strike. So she creates this story where all kinds of top entrepreneurs and business owners say, screw it, I'm out of here. Because they're sick of the taxes and they're sick of the regulation and being abused, and for the world to just punch them in the gut when they're trying to save the world by creating washing machines, dryers, vacuum cleaners, soap, a business to fix your plugged up toilet. You know, plumbers are actually more responsible. Plumbers are actually more responsible for the health of Americans than doctors. Because if they didn't get that poo-poo out of the house, oh my God, there'd be a nightmare disaster with all of our health. God bless plumbers. They're more valuable than doctors. But doctors, somehow they've weaseled their way into the universe to have a great PR budget, so we think they're the saviors of the world. All right, so Ayn Rand has this novel. And in her novel, the businessmen of the world, the entrepreneurs of the world, they say, screw it. And they just disappear. They basically say, let's see you run the world. And so the government and the labor unions are stuck. And they have to run the world themselves, and they don't know how. They run it into the ground. Ayn Rand was from Russia, and she saw this happening in the old Bolshevik Revolution and the Soviet Union. And there was a time, and there's even a story out of the Soviet Union days when the Bolsheviks took over a factory that had employed and blessed, I don't remember exactly how many people, let's say 100,000 people in a given town or community, because everybody worked at this factory. And then the feeder to the factory, you know, because a factory, you just can't have a factory by itself. You got to have factory workers who buy shoes and bicycles and, you know, have a food cart that drives up every day. So the feeder system to the factory and all, let's say that factory employed or blessed 100,000 people. Well, anyway, so the Bolsheviks took over. And just like in Atlas Shrugged, in Ayn Rand's story, the entrepreneurs disappear all on their own. But in the Bolshevik Revolution, at this particular factory that I read about when in my volume of reading about these things, the Bolsheviks, the morons who took over, killed the engineers of this factory because they were paid too much money. and they killed them. Or else the engineers had to hightail it out of there in the middle of the night. And so it just wasn't fair that they were making so much money and the janitors were not making equal pay. So they killed the engineers of this factory, and they thought they would run it themselves, except for one small problem. When the machines started breaking down, the janitors and the secretaries had no idea how to fix it. So the whole damn town disappeared. So, there you go. The whole damn town disappeared. Not disappeared, but just was suffered. It suffered greatly because the factory shut down because they couldn't keep running. And so everybody in the factory who worked for the factory was fired. And then the shoemakers who supplied shoes to the people, what did they do? The bicycle people, what did they do? It turned into a disaster when you killed the entrepreneurs, the engineers, the talent that actually made things run. So when you have a world run on easy money and easy credit, you're asking for trouble down the road. Because with easy money and easy credit, you're asking for people who don't have a plan to jump into the game. What do I mean by people who don't have a plan? They've got a half-ass plan. They're going to jump into the game and they don't see what's going on. They don't know how the world works. They don't. When you have high interest rates, let me tell you, the dynamics of the whole world changes, because when the interest rate is 20% as opposed to 2%, the guys who are doing the lending, they do a bit more homework before they lend the money, and they make sure the guy has a talented idea and that the money can and will be paid back. But when interest rates are based on almost zero and money is easy to create and distribute, they don't give a crap who borrows the money, and they really don't give a crap whether it gets paid back. It creates a different dynamic. Oh yeah, so here's why I called the brother Dale, because I wanted to think out loud. So in Ayn Rand's book, the entrepreneurs were quitting, and they left the world to be run by the government and the labor union and whoever else wanted to run the business. For example, there was a story in Atlas Shrugged about a man who had a bunch of oil fields out in the West, and he felt so much abuse from taxation and regulation that he just lit his oil derricks on fire and said, I'm gone. Let's see you guys put it out. Let's see you guys get the oil out of the ground. You're going to punish me. You take over. He just disappeared, and the oil wells were on fire. They were his oil wells. He lit them on fire and just disappeared. Let's see you guys do it. Anyway, so now we have a weird world in which not even McDonald's employees want to come to work to make money. That's weird. It's not that the entrepreneurs don't care to make money. We've gotten so weird with so much printed money, so much inflation, so much low interest, that money is not even valued by the McDonald's hamburger flippers. They won't come to work. They don't want it. Why? Because the central bankers have stabbed Paul Volcker in the back, and they are printing up so much money. They're giving away stimulus money left and right because of the jabby and the lockdowns. It creates one dynamic, one whirlwind after another. What do you call it when a whirlwind is in the ocean? It's sucking things down. Whirlpool, that's it, a whirlpool. And so when the entrepreneurs go on strike, that's one thing. But when the hamburger flippers go on strike, what are you talking about? McDonald's now has signs up in the window, and Wendy's, and maybe Target. I mean, there's signs up in all kinds of windows now, hiring $15 an hour. That's more than minimum wage, right? Next week, it'll probably be $16 an hour. They just can't get these guys to come back to work. This is something I think is surprising. what does this mean? I think it means that everybody's getting the idea that money is useless now. Why go to work and make $600 a week, and I have to drive there with my own car and my own gas and my time to and for? That would be over an hour of wasted time, when I can get stimulus money and make $600 a week for sitting on my ass watching television, playing video games. We're creating a world that is going to fall apart faster than anything we've ever seen. If the hamburger flippers are not flipping hamburgers, it has a chain reaction. We don't really, do we really need hamburger flippers? No, but we do need shoes and someone to fix the toilets. And we need someone to fix the cars. You know, car mechanics around the country are finding it hard to find car mechanics. And heating and air conditioning guys are finding it hard to find technicians to come in and fix heating and air conditioning systems. What if your air conditioning goes out in the middle of summer? Man, it's going to be hot. So everything in our world is like a chain reaction, a domino, you know, that it affects other things. How does the world work? How does the world work? It's a complicated deal out there. And if you're running around with your head up your butt thinking that everything is a-okay, it's not necessarily a-okay. You can kind of figure out how the world works by starting at looking at interest rates. That's the key thing, right? That we can say that interest rates and money creation is like the foundational thing of all humanity, because we all have blood running in our veins and we all have money sitting in our pockets. So we want to understand the dynamics of money, how it's created, how it's distributed, how we love it or don't love it. Because money is the one common denominator besides blood that we all have. And money is created by these central bank guys. And this guy, Paul Volcker, he was brilliant. And he understood that if you give money the perception of being valuable by jacking up interest rates to 20%, people will act differently. They'll spend differently. They'll build their lives differently. They'll plan for the future differently than if you have near zero interest rates. I'm telling you, when interest rates are low or zero or below zero, people behave recklessly. It actually encourages bad behavior, not only in stupid investment, but even in the stock market. You know, a lot of people have, I told you, we can look at the world through various pairs of glasses, and a lot of people out there look at the world through the stock market glasses, and they think that if the stock market is doing okay, well, then the world's okay. They don't know that the stock market is just one indicator or one vessel through which money is pumped. And but money is the stock market is very subjected to money flows and money creation and interest rates. In fact, it's pretty well known by stock market analysts that if you jack up interest rates, you are going to suck money out of the stock market over into the bond market, because interest rates are enough to pull that money out of the stock market. But when interest rates are low, money naturally gravitates into the stock market, because when interest rates are low, you create a world of speculators instead of investors. When interest rates are high, you create a world of investors rather than speculators. Right now, the world is so crazy that all that we have for the future is speculation. It's really hard to know what's going to happen. But when hamburger flippers refuse to go to work, they're not complaining that they're hungry. No, they're being fed by the creation of money in the stimulus program. It's going to cause dynamics, a domino effect. What in the world? What in the world? What in the world? I think that the hamburger flippers not coming to work is a very bad sign. Because it's not just the entrepreneurs who go on strike and say, screw you guys. It's the hamburger flippers who are saying, screw you guys. And when I say hamburger flippers, I mean any blue collar job. And we look at the hamburger flippers and we yawn because I don't like hamburgers. I like chicken. Well, you go over to Popeye's Chicken and they have the same problem. But it's not the hamburger flippers and the Popeye bakers. It's going to affect us in the realm of Uber drivers and plumbers and food processors. I'm thinking that these guys can't pull off this low interest rate business forever. There's got to be another Paul Volcker coming around the scene. Otherwise, money is going to go to, the interest rates are going to go to zero and money is going to be despised altogether. And people are not going to want it. They're going to run out as fast as they get it and buy anything, whether beans or lumber or hammers, or they're going to trade it for anything because obviously money has no value if interest rates remain low. And I'm not sure our beloved central bankers have the brains to figure this out. They have been trained in so-called Keynesian economic theory, which encourages spending rather than saving. God bless Paul Volcker. So, I suggest that we imitate the Amish or the Mennonites, who have built their life in such a way that they're not so dependent on money. They don't exactly look at the value of things in terms of money and measurements of money. They might even do barters and trades. But they definitely lean toward the idea of supplying themselves with food and production, and they have their own sawmills. You can make a dang sawmill out of a chainsaw. I've done it before. I didn't make a sawmill, but I actually took a tree, a rather large tree, and used a chainsaw to make boards out of it. And they were good-looking boards, according to me. So we can imitate the Amish and become less dependent on the banks and their circus of money printing. And we could be our own Paul Volcker, right? Just by not being so dependent on the banks and their circus of money printing. Now, whatever that means. You could say, get yourself some gold or silver or canned beans or, boards of lumber because they last a long time. You can beat the crowd because if this keeps up, there will be a line of people going out every door to convert their money, their worthless money, into something that has more value than the money does itself. Because Paul Volcker has long been forgotten. These guys are printing up money at breakneck speed, and it creates a dynamic that's weird, and it causes speculation rather than investing. We're not investing in the future, we're speculating about the future. Now, how does the world really work? So we'll go backwards a little bit. And I want to say that almost everything that we believe is just the opposite of how it really is. We think that the land of Oz is this way or that way. It's just a goofy little man behind a curtain pulling strings with a loudspeaker and a threatening voice. Everything we know is just an appearance. And then when we jump over the fence into the religious world, everything those Christians tell us is just the opposite of reality too. They have a world that's run by Satan, but I suspect the world is run by God for his purpose. And God doesn't mind keeping us in the dark until his purpose is fulfilled. Now, in my yakking about Paul Volcker, I'm not talking about spiritual things. I'm just talking about how the world works economically and politically in the dynamic realms in that arena. God bless Paul Volcker. He jacked up interest rates to 20%. It scared the crap out of us in the 80s. And so we made better decisions about money. We didn't borrow to buy a house at 20% if we didn't have a good plan to pay it off. And when interest rates are 20%, all the lenders out there in the world, they start scrutinizing the borrower, peeking up under his skirt to make sure he's got the goods with which to pay it off. But when interest rates are low, shoot, give that money to anybody who wants it. A stupid 18-year-old kid who has no idea why he's going to college, let's give him a $100,000 loan. And what's he going to do in college? He's going to party, get drunk, get stoned, and take the easiest classes he can find, like feminist classes and politically correct classes, and film studies. He's going to take film studies. Oh, yeah, that'll help him pay off this $100,000 loan. So when interest rates are low, lenders get stupid, and stupid people come out of the woodwork to borrow the money. There are so many kids who graduated college with $100,000 loan. They have no idea how they're going to pay it off. And according to the current law, they can't get rid of that loan in a bankruptcy court. It's against the law. See, the money was so easy that the banking industry got a law written that the students can never unload their debt in bankruptcy court. They'll be strapped around them forever. And if the parent co-signs on the loan, then they're going to come after the parent too. So the lenders had no responsibility to check out the worthiness of the borrower. And you can see this in the student loan universe. Because the lenders had no responsibility. They knew they were going to get their money back. They lent it to any moron out there who said, I want to go to college and study film studies and gender studies and anything useless, as long as I can party on the $100,000 you give me. And so if they have no skin in the game by loaning the money out, then of course they're going to loan it out. You need to jack up these interest rates so that bankers lend responsibly. And when they have skin in the game and they can actually lose money by lending, then they won't lend to morons who have no plan. They won't lend to the riffraff that comes out of the woodwork. They'll actually lend to guys who have good ideas on building the future, because you're giving money a true value when you jack up the interest rates. People see and understand that money has value, so they'll honor money. But at low interest rates, they won't honor money. So there. All right. I'm done. God bless Paul Volcker. Richard, Rhonda, Greg, Michael. Yeah, baby. You can come in now if you want to, because I'm done talking about God bless Paul Volcker. So, throughout the 80s, when I was a young man, I really didn't understand how the world worked. And I barely have a better understanding now. But I can tell you, high interest rates scared us at the time. We didn't know how we were going to manage it all. But this guy, Paul Volcker, oh man, he was a genius. He snuck in and blessed us, and we didn't even know what was going on. And then along comes the morons like Greenspan, who start dropping interest rates like crazy and creating a dynamic of making the real estate prices go to the moon because he drops interest rates. And then other dynamics he created too by dropping interest rates. And boy, 12 years ago, 2008, when nobody believed, by and large, that the price of real estate could ever collapse. It's never collapsed before. Hell, back in the 1950s, you could buy a house for about $5,000. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house for $5,000. And now, what does a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house cost? $200,000, $500,000. It's up there, baby. Inflation. It's happened. You know what the worst thing about inflation is, or one of the worst? It's the damn capital gains tax. So it's like a double tax on reality, right? So you buy a house for, say, $100,000, and due to the money printers at the central bank, the price of the house is no longer $100,000, but now you can sell it for $200,000. And so you do sell it for $200,000. And then they give you a capital gains tax. They say you made $100,000 too easy. Therefore, they're going to tax you on that extra capital gains. Well, guess what? The house itself was actually less valuable in reality, because when you bought it, the roof did not leak. The plumbing was still good. The heater was still good. But you sold it for $200,000 after you bought it for $100,000. You sold it for $200,000, and now the heater is kind of sketchy, makes a lot of noise. The roof leaks. The plumbing is like, there's a couple of leaks down there. So it's actually less valuable, but you can get more for the house, and then they're going to tax on capital gains. This world is not designed in your favor. It's designed in Paul Volcker's favor, or rather the central bankers. I'm actually saying Paul Volcker was a hero, but he's dead. You can come in and talk about anything. We don't have to talk about interest rates and Paul Volcker. If that's not your topic, we can talk about God, the scriptures, songwriting, internal combustion engines. So there. Are you listening, Rhonda? Okay. Paul Volcker was an American economist who served 2 terms in as the 12th chair of the Federal Reserve under Carter and Reagan from 79 to, let's see what that Wikipedia article says. '87. From 79 to 87. In 1987, there was a big stock market crash. Happened, I think, in October. And guess what? The price of the Dow Jones and the price of a 1-ounce gold coin went 1 to 1. The price of a gold coin and the Dow Jones Industrial Average went 1 to 1. What does that mean? It has happened before. In 1933, the price of a 1-ounce gold coin and the Dow Jones Industrial Average went 1 to 1. So it's happened twice before. Will it happen again? You can't say it's impossible because it already has happened twice before. Things are related. Even if you don't know their relation, things are related. So Paul Volcker left. He left the Federal Reserve. He was the chairman until August of '87. And a couple of months later, the damn stock market crashed. It scared the crap out of everybody. They didn't know what it meant. I clearly remember at the time, the day that it crashed, because I was not into the stock market. I was too young and stupid to pay attention to anything. I just started up my little advertising agency business in '87. I went in to pitch not a furniture store, a carpet dealer. He was the largest carpet dealer in the area. I went in to pitch his account and take it over. And at the time, that very day, the stock market crashed. And all the salesmen in that company, in that carpet dealer store, they were all worried and hovered in the corner trying to figure out what the hell was going on. I guess they had a little bit of money wrapped up in the stock market. And I remember their manager saying to them, "Screw the stock market, get out on the floor and start selling something." That was very striking to me. He didn't care about the stock market. The manager of that store, he wanted everyone to get back to work. And to a great degree, if the stock market collapses, maybe you can say that to your crew. So what? The stock market collapsed. Get out there and get back to work. That would be smart. Anyway, but in October in '87, the price of gold and the price of the Dow Jones Industrial Average matched. Holy smoke, that's significant. And that means something. And you can figure it out. Intelligently controlled things do not act randomly. Yeah, cars are built to be steered, and the stock market was built to be... Oh, yeah. That sounds like a quote from Ace Theo. Thank you for that, Richard. Make me laugh. So there. Oh yeah, we were going to look at this Wikipedia thing about Paul Volcker, an American economist, 12th chair, got out of there in '87 just before the stock market crashed, so they wouldn't blame him for it all. Let me get rid of that. Okay. He is widely credited with having ended the high levels of inflation seen in the United States. Notice what a weasel sentence this is. He is widely credited. So Wikipedia won't take a stand on this. They're a bunch of chicken shits. He did end high levels of inflation seen in the 70s and early 80s. He was the chairman. He was born in New Jersey, son of Alma and Paul. Anyway, so God bless Paul Volcker. He did us all a favor without knowing it. There you go. Rhonda, come in. Richard, come in. Michael, come in. Or else I'm going to bail out of here, baby. I've been talking about economics and interest rates for an hour. Because I think it's important. Because we need to understand what's going on in our world so we don't freak out. And the biggest understanding I think we can have is that all is of God. That's the biggest understanding. But as far as why the world has gone crazy. Oh, as a follow-up to this thought about interest rates, easy money, and easy credit, I think we could make the argument that the pharmaceutical companies have tapped into this easy money, easy credit business through the back door. It's not really apparent, and I haven't gone out of my way to figure it out. But obviously, if they're giving away free jabbies, somebody's paying for that stuff. They don't love you. They don't love humanity. They're after a buck. How are they getting paid for their free jabbies? They obviously have some access to the back door of the money printer's house. The shack, the wooden shack where they're printing up all the money. And lo and behold, it's not really a wooden shack. It's just a little stupid computer. And they're punching the keyboard just as fast as they can to print up the money, trillions and trillions, and they're so exhausted that they got to change hands. And then finally they get blisters on the fingers, so they put an ad in the paper on Craigslist to find a nurse to come in and work at the Federal Reserve so that they can put Band-Aids on the fingers of the money printers because they're so tender. They printed up so much money. Sorry. I'm out of control. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I reckon I'll go make some breakfast. Thank you for listening to me blabber on about how the world works and how we should bless. God bless Paul Volcker. Amen. Grace to you.